Good morning, friends. We are back at it again, this time with my microphones that have failed. So frustrating. With August and the heat in full swing, it is a great moment to post this walkthrough of how we set up our irrigation system, which we are running off of our hose bib. We have used drip tape and drip tubing throughout the garden, but we really want to focus on the drip tape for this video. We're starting by exposing the ends of the conduit that the crew buried for me. They ran this conduit under all of the hardscaped areas so that we can easily fish through supply lines or even low voltage lighting should we want to add some path lights down the line. I also want to note that we actually planned out much of this on paper beforehand, so we knew exactly where we would be trenching, how many connectors we would need, what kind of connectors we would be purchasing. So much of that preparation will save you a lot of heartache and hassle down the line. So after we finished exposing the ends of the conduit, we then turned our attention to the south part of the garden, which you see here. We started by trenching straight off of that conduit. This is for our main supply line, and it is running along the inside edge of the future raised beds that we are building here. We are going to be building 2 U-shaped beds that will surround this basalt dish in the middle. As we trench to the south, we are going to be popping up this irrigation line at various points along the way to make sure that we are covering all garden beds along the outside as well as along the inside of that raised bed area. So you are actually going to see us veer off to the left here. That is one point at which we are going to trench across so it pops up into that other raised bed. And of course, all of this will be backfilled and disappear from view. We're going to then continue running our main line to the south. It will pop up into the far edge of that raised bed, and then we actually turned it. We just had enough play in that line to turn it and trench underneath the roots of this beautiful birch tree, where it will then pop up into the far end of the bed closest to the street. Before we go pushing this irrigation supply line through the conduit, I wanted to show you a few things we've done to set ourselves up for future success. First, we have taped off the end of the supply line so we don't end up with dirt in there as we push it through. The other thing that we've done is we have actually attached a piece of nylon string and taped it around the end, and we are going to run this through with the pipe. The reason we are doing this is because we haven't decided yet what we're going to do about lighting in this area. If we were to try to push any sort of low voltage wire through this conduit, we really couldn't have enough pressure or leverage to push it through properly. It is going to be 10 times easier to simply tie any sort of low voltage wire to the end of this nylon twine and just simply pull it through. All right, here we are, a little status check. We have connected all of our pieces and backfilled as we went. And now you can see where the supply lines are popping up into our garden spaces. For good measure, we have sprayed on the dirt where the line is buried so we don't hit it while digging. And we also made one tiny change. We actually ended up running the other supply line out into the boxwood hedge on the east side of the raised bed. That way we can run it around the front of the garden and not have to worry about ducking it under any sort of pathway that we build in the future into that little inner circle in our raised veggie area. With all of our irrigation lines run, it is now time to get to work. We have laid a base of compacted gravel along the entire outline of the garden bed. We are making sure to, of course, step down to accommodate the slope of the yard. We do have a little bit of significant slope as you get back into the southwest corner. I can't impress upon you enough how important this first row is. It really sets the stage for the entire bed construction. So while it's super time consuming, you're gonna wanna make sure you take your time, level each block, level across several blocks, which we don't picture here, but we did have a 3-foot level, and just go slow. How this base row is laid makes a huge difference with how the rest of the garden bed is going to come together. One other note, it's actually helpful to have a little bit of super fine gravel for making those micro adjustments to make sure that your first course is laid perfectly flat. The material that we're using is actually a mutual material product that was part of my display from the Northwest Flower and Garden Show. It is a product called Tuscan Stone in a charcoal tumbled finish. And this is what I used to create the kick wall that surrounded my display garden. Shockingly, we had the exact amount needed to construct these 2 beds. The next major task was filling the garden beds. I sourced a veggie garden blend from a local bulk supplier. To make the task of filling the raised beds a little easier, we actually left one of the sides open so we could easily come down the middle with the wheelbarrow and dump straight away into the bed. Once we had the beds mostly filled, we topped off the last 6 inches with a blend of that same veggie mix, as well as an additional load of compost for just another boost of added nutrients. We also made sure that our irrigation supply lines were vertical within that bed and then packed the soil in all around them. Last but not least, we filled in the opening we used for wheelbarrow access. Hey friends, okay, so we are back for drip tape. Drip tape is something that we have used in the cut flower garden behind the house, and we're going to use it specifically in the raised veggie beds behind me. So today what I want to go over is I want to go over supplies that we're using, our technique that we use. It's super duper straightforward. There's a lot of information about installing this online, and it's a lot easier and more accessible than you think it's going to be. It's actually a piece of cake, and it's almost, you know, it kind of reminds me of, it kind of reminds me if you were a kid who built with Legos or blocks or anything like that, this can be a snap. All right, so let's go over all of these little bits and pieces that we have gathered here. The first thing I wanted to show you is the supply line. So this is 1/2-inch supply line. You already saw us run this underneath the pathway, and this is what is actually popped up at the end of each one of these raised beds. We are going to use this to actually run our drip tape from. So once you have your 1/2-inch supply line, you are going to need one of these little punches actually. This slips in over top like that, and that metal tip is actually going to punch through, and that is how you're going to connect your next piece. The next thing you're going to need are these barbed adapters. Now this one, you can buy them with or without this valve. Now, I actually really appreciate having this valve because if I simply don't have a row planted, I turn it off. Otherwise, I'm just out here watering everything. And especially in like early spring or winter crops when it's not full coverage, I'm gonna use this pretty heavily. Once you have your hole punched, you're actually gonna insert this barb into your supply line, okay? Now, from there, this is actually where you're gonna hook up your drip tape. So this is the drip tape that we are using. I actually got this online at a place called the Drip Depot. This is left over from our cut flower garden project. Our spacing is every 6 inches here. I found that this coverage was fantastic for cut flowers. I think it's gonna be great for veggies too. So once you have your barbed adapter all hooked up, you actually just simply feed this over the top. And what you'll see is you wanna actually get it over this little ledge right here, this barb.
And what that's gonna do is that's gonna help this from pulling out. Once you have it inserted all the way, let's see if I can do this, yep. You're gonna close it down and that's gonna lock it in place, okay? Now, a couple other little things. At the end of the installation of this drip tape, I can't show you on this piece, but essentially you're gonna fold this over and you're going to, actually pull it in this way. You feed it through like that. You actually fold this under, and then when you pull it down tight, it locks it in. And this is how you terminate the end of each run. Now, a couple other little things. When you're working with 1/2-inch tubing, this is actually a pretty rigid material, and we're gonna need to maneuver around the beds. So as it comes up through the bed, we are gonna run this along the end and have our drip lines coming out from here. However, once it comes out, we're gonna need it to make an angle like that. So I wanna show you two different types of adapters. We have, both of these are from Home Depot. They're really, really simple. They're just different ways of doing the same darn thing. So this one, you have a little barb actually on the inside. So when you take this, you're just gonna shove it in and it's gonna catch, so it won't be able to pull apart. This one is a little bit different. You actually screw off the ends here and this barbed adapter comes out. So what you actually wanna do is you wanna put it on like this, get that brown piece in place. This is gonna hammer down in, and then you hook it up, and then you slide this brown piece up and screw it on to tighten it and lock everything in place. And again, I just wanna show you two different ways of doing the exact same thing because I don't know where you are and what your home improvement store has. Of course, all this stuff you can find online as well. Now, when you get to the end of a run, there are two different ways that you're gonna finish off this 1/2-inch supply line. You can either use like a really simple standard plug like this. This one, it actually, well, let's just take this sucker off. Or maybe I can't. Okay, so underneath here, you're actually gonna notice that it's a little bit threaded, right? So when you come in, you're actually gonna screw this into place, and then this last little bit, you're actually gonna hammer down. This is one way of ending a run of 1/2-inch supply line. The second way, this is very similar to this product, which is by a company called Dig. And what you can see, what's kind of cool about this is you can really flush the line because the end cap is removable. So you're gonna simply insert it into this end, and then if for some reason you need to flush out that line, you have the ability to remove this pretty easily and do so. Last but not least, I've got these universal loop stakes. This is for use with 1/2-inch tubing. So the reason you want this is as this line becomes pressurized, it's going to potentially move a little bit on you, and you want to keep this in place. I am also going to use these for staking my drip tape into place. And so just really, really simply, it pops over the top. I like that there's a little bit of an arc to the top, so as this inflates with water, it gives a little bit of wiggle room, but she's not gonna be flopping all over the place. And then also, in terms of cutting this, I use a pair of garden shears just to make a super clean line, but if you have kitchen scissors or anything like that, this isn't too terrible to cut through, but you are gonna need something with some strength to it.
Just to give you a better example, at the very end of each one of these drip line runs, you're gonna put these little tabs over it. You're gonna feed your drip tape through the smaller opening, fold it in once, fold it in a second time, and then you're gonna pull that tab back down over the doubled up drip tape. This will ensure that no water will be escaping through that end. Part of the preparation phase when planning out our irrigation was actually deciding how far apart we wanted our drip tape to run. In this garden bed, I decided for this shorter end that I would be installing this in thirds. So it essentially works out to be about 9 inches apart. As we turn the garden bed and we go along this longer side, I knew I would be planting larger crops that needed larger spacing in here. So I just extended it a little bit and broke that into thirds, and it ends up running 3 lines 10 inches apart. Of course, you know your garden, you know what space you're going to be working in and how you like to plant out your rows. So certainly tailor this to your needs. One other note, As you are rolling out your drip tape, you are going to want to make sure that your emitters are face up. When I first did my cutting garden, I felt like that was almost counterintuitive, but that is indeed how you want to install it.
What's the moment of truth? Oh my God, it's all working. Oh, we got a kink, we got a kink. Okay. It's not out this line yet. I'm exhausted and sweaty. Okay. All right, we have arrived at the final step in our irrigation project, which essentially is automation. When we are talking about irrigation and we are running things off of a hose bib as opposed to like a proper control valve box, which is what we've done here, we are gonna need one of two things. We are either gonna need one of these timers that everyone has seen at Home Depot, just super old school analog. They work, they're great. Or we can try a different option. Funny enough, both of these are Orbit product, not sponsored, they don't know who I am. But this is something that we purchased for the cut flower garden down back, and we've been really, really happy with it. Now, if you're someone who is frustrated easily by tech, for example, this might not be a good option for you because it can be a little finicky during the setup phase, but then after that, it runs so beautifully and has performed very, very well for us over the past 2 years. So this is actually an older version. We bought this as a backup when we purchased the cut flower timer. They do have a new update. I don't know all the details on that, but in any event, we had this, so this is what we are using. This is fantastic. I really enjoy the app. We took a road trip to Yellowstone last summer, and there was a whole heat wave situation happening here, and we were able to literally bump up the timer on the cut flower garden and not even be in Seattle. So that was wonderful from my perspective. I feel like this gives us a lot of flexibility. It also has some built-in features like anticipating weather, sending alerts to my phone. If there's an issue with it connecting, I know right away. In any event, I've really loved it. It's been a good experience for me. There was a little bit of troubleshooting when we initially set this up. And you do have to have good signal because there is gonna be a component that's gonna plug in inside the home. And then of course, the portion that is going to plug in off of your hose bib. So check it out as we set it up. I will add links for both of these products in the description box below.
So I've already attached an adapter to the end of my supply line, and now I am hooking that up to the B-Hyve. Super simple, screw it in, and then from there you can see I'm actually connecting it to this 4-way splitter off the back of the house. What is coming off of that 4-way splitter is actually a pressure reducer valve because we have some insane water pressure coming off that house. The B-Hyve app is super clean and simple. At the bottom, you can view your calendar, you can see programs you have running, your zones, and then on the far right, you can see some kind of connection and troubleshooting bits down under My B-Hyve. And then up at the top is actually a toggle, and this is where I can switch between My B-Hyve for the cut flower garden and the other for the front yard. On your home page, you have two buttons. You've got your rain delay, and then you have a manual water. I think the rain delay is a little silly because this will automate and initiate the delay anyways in case there's rain coming in. However, I love the water manually button. This is so great when you want to check for any nicks in your drip tape, or if I've recently done any transplanting and I want to water everything in. One thing I will mention though is I still use a hose with a proper shower attachment every time I plant seeds. All right, my friends, so there we have it. Super easy drip tape installation and how we automate our watering system to make our lives just simply easier. Pop any questions that you might have in the comments below. I'm going to leave links in the description box to all of the products that we have used, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.